Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I will be covering the new Apple updates. I will be talking about the new iPhones, the new watches, and also the AirPods. Now personally I was the most excited about the new watch edition, but this video will be covering and focusing on the new iPhones, and then in the next couple of videos I will cover also the watch and the AirPods. Before I start, I have to commend Apple for such an amazing presentation. I think that they sold not just the products really well, but also the whole idea, the whole narrative that they were trying to sell to us, and it was more about security, privacy, and these more kind of emergency situation oriented, and they have implemented or they have come up with a lot of new features that have to do with security, and we will be covering them as we go through these videos. Now when it comes to the new iPhone, so iPhone 14, iPhone 14 Plus, and also the iPhone 14 Pros, I wasn't as positively surprised or shocked or anything like that when I saw the iPhone 14s. Now when you look at them, it's really pretty much the same design as the previous generation of iPhones. The same notch is still present on the iPhone 14s, whereas the iPhone 14 Pros models have that new redesigned pill notch, which they have creatively called, in the most Apple move ever, the dynamic island, but we will be talking about that in a minute. So starting off with the iPhone 14s, we have two versions or two dimensions. One is 6.1 inches and then the other one is 6.7 inches, which really means that Apple is more focusing on those customers who like really big displays, who like to enjoy these bright, colorful, and vivid displays, whereas those who want something smaller are essentially left out. I personally think that 6.1 inches is perfectly fine for everyday user, and it features now this XDR OLED display, which is supposedly much brighter and also more energy efficient than the previous generations of iPhones. Now I just want to touch upon the notch a little bit. I think that they even could have implemented this new pill design notch on the regular iPhones, but at this point I think it has become more of a visual identity characteristic for Apple, so they have probably wanted to keep that, but also give some additional extra features to Pro users, those users who are willing to pay more for the Pro models and enjoy some of the greatest and latest features. Before moving on, I also want to say or talk about the colors. There are now 5 new colors, pastel colors that I kind of expected to be present on the M2 MacBook Airs, but that didn't really come to fruition, did it? When we talk about the battery performance or battery life, it has allegedly now a full day use. Again, that is very, I think, a big claim or a bold claim to make, especially depending on how one uses their phone, but Apple has shown that they can make really good phones which are very energy efficient even before, so I'm not really concerned that this claim won't be substantiated, but it is a very bold claim to make after all. Now when we talk about the processors, there is a difference now between the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Plus and then the Pro versions. This is the first time probably that Apple has differentiated among their chips in the phones between the Pros and non-Pro versions, and this time around the non-Pro versions have a A15 Bionic processor with a 6-core CPU and a 5-core GPU and a 16-core neural engine for machine learning. Now what this essentially means is that the processor from the previous generation of Pro iPhones has been taken over and put into these new iPhone 14s, whereas the iPhone 14 Pro has a new processor which is supposedly much better when it comes to image processing, camera quality, and so on. Now talking about the camera, the whole event really has featured a lot on the camera performance. So the biggest improvements are supposed to happen when it comes to low light conditions and nighttime conditions. So this new and bigger sensor is supposed to deliver some better performing images in low light conditions, and the action mode has also been improved, so we have now more stabilization. So the cameras are 12 megapixel cameras with 1.5 aperture and then 1.9 aperture for the front camera, which now also features autofocus. Now one of the features that they also focused on is deep fusion, which essentially means that the camera takes multiple frames at once and then layers them together just to give you more detail, more depth, more dimension even before it gets processed. So now the images should be much more clear and more vibrant and also more sharp. Now as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, really Apple focused on security. It focused on these unpredictable events and situations and how their products could offer you some assistance, some support support if something bad was to happen. So one of the things that they really talked about was crash detection. Crash detection is one of their now features which essentially can recognize if you were in a car accident. Unfortunately, for those who do end up in these situations, now iPhones and even Apple Watches can contact emergency services for you, and they can even detect through these new sensors if the crash happened in the first place. Now, also for people who maybe find themselves out of reach of cell towers or reception, they can now use this emergency SOS via satellite. What you can do now is you can communicate or send messages via satellite. This is a very, I would say, new and demanding technology. This is something that's very difficult to implement and difficult to do, and as far as I've understood, it's only going to be supported in the US and Canada only for the first 2 years. Now, one of the things that I find admirable, especially in the whole situation of climate change and everything, is that they have focused on bringing you 100% recycled, reused materials into their new phones, and also reducing that plastic wrapping and carbon footprint of their products. Over 200 suppliers of Apple products are now committed to 100% renewable energy. Now, really, that is all what's important in a nutshell when it comes to the new iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. I will just say that the iPhone 14 costs $799, so the same price as the iPhone 13 from the last generation. It starts at $799, and then the Plus starts at $899. Now, the iPhone 14 Pro, really the new feature that's a standout feature is the new notch, the new pill interactive notch. I think that this is one of the most creative and the most efficient ways of redesigning something that has been kind of an eyesore, really, and something that Apple has been criticized heavily for, and that's their notch. So this has been really an innovative way to take that eyesore, take that something that is not a stronghold of their design, and they changed it in a way that it will allow you to interact with your software in a very useful way. They have integrated the software with the hardware to allow you to receive notifications, to pick calls, to interact with calls, to use the timer app, to get the notification of using the Face ID, all that, so that you can have more, I would say, multitasking, but also just more functional design. Now, the pill notch still, in my opinion, looks a little bit too wide, but then again, they had to put some of these sensors and of course the camera behind or within that notch. Aside from a quirky name, I think that the whole idea and the way that they have done it is not really a gimmick. I think a lot of people will benefit from this, especially considering the fact that it will support third-party apps. So I see that a lot of apps can really utilize this new interactive notch. The new iPhones, the US models or variants, won't be coming with a SIM card tray. So that is something that a lot of people have been protesting already about on Twitter, saying that US travelers or tourists who go to other countries where eSIMs are not really a thing yet, they will have to use international roaming plans, which are much more expensive than if you were to buy a local SIM card and use these local plans, which I agree with, because even in my country, it's not really, we are struggling to get 4G connectivity, let alone to have eSIMs. Yes, Apple is trying to push the whole industry forth, but I think that it's maybe too early in a sense. But then again, Apple doesn't listen to these it's too early criticisms and stuff, because we know that they have been removing really vital, important things from their devices so that the whole industry can move forward. But now, as I've understood, again, it is only going to be thing with the US models, so international models will probably have a SIM card tray. So of course, iPhone 14 Pro has all of the features that I've mentioned regarding the crash detection, emergency SOS, just like iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. And the iPhone 14 Pro models come in 4 colors. Now, talking about the display, the dimensions are the same with the iPhone 14 models, so 6.1 and 6.7 inches. XDR display, ProMotion, which means that it can go from 1 Hz to 120 Hz depending on how you're using the display. If it's using its new always on display feature, the display refresh rate can drop to 1 Hz to preserve battery and to be more energy efficient. Now, this new processor is a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and a 16-core neural engine, which is allegedly 40% faster than competition and also uses 20% less power than previous Apple chips. Together with the new camera, which has a 48 megapixel sensor, I think that this is the first time that Apple has gone this high with the megapixels, especially especially using the new quad pixel sensor technology. So together, the camera and the processor are a really beautiful duo to give you more performance from the camera, to give you more vivid, vibrant, clear, sharp images, especially in low light conditions as well. It also allows you to record 4K video at 30 and 24 frames per second, and these lenses support optic stabilization as well. So the camera setup can go from 0.5 to 3 times telephoto zoom, which really, according to their images and their footage, which can just bring so much more into the frame. So more or less that would be all when it comes to the new iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Pro. Personally, I think that the iPhone 14 Pro is something that I would lean more towards, considering especially that the starting price is $999, whereas the Pro Max is $1099. So not a huge difference, I would say, for a new design and for something just so innovative and so creative from Apple. Of course, I would wait for some sales and price drops later on. But also, Apple has mentioned that you can trade in a specific qualified phone up to even $1,000 to get the new iPhones. So really, that's pretty much everything that I have noticed or that I wrote down as important in my notes from the event and the announcements. If you think that I missed something or if I got something wrong, because I'm trying to get this video as soon as possible, please leave it down in the comments below, and also leave your thoughts and impressions on the whole thing, the new iPhones, the new watches, the new AirPods. We can start a discussion. And also, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'm looking forward to all of the reviews and all of the hands-on videos on YouTube. Stay tuned.